We live in interesting times. For the headlines. The Islamic State group has been beaten in Syria, according to U.S. President Donald Trump, confirming his stunning order to pull American ground forces from the war-ravaged nation.
And now it's time for our troops to come.
The U.S. Senate approves an emergency short-term spending bill that averts a looming government shutdown, but excludes funds that President Trump sought for a U.S.-Mexico border wall. Almost 700 clergymen in Illinois have been accused of child sexual assault, a far greater number than the Catholic Church had previously disclosed. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us. And now to the news. President Trump moments ago declaring, quote, "We have defeated ISIS in Syria." A big military decision by President Trump that could have major implications for the Middle East. A defense official said the military is preparing for a, quote, "full and rapid withdrawal of American troops from Syria." The U.S. has been in Syria since late 2015 and has about 2,000 troops currently there.
We've been fighting for a long time in Syria. I've been president for almost 2 years, and we've really stepped it up. And we have won against ISIS. We've beaten them, and we've beaten them badly. We've taken back the land, and now it's time for our troops to come back home. I get very saddened when I have to write letters or call parents or wives or husbands of soldiers who have been killed fighting for our country. It's a great honor. We cherish them. But it's heartbreaking. There's no question about it. It's heartbreaking. Now we've won. It's time to come back. They're getting ready. You're going to see them soon. These are great American heroes. These are great heroes of the world because they fought for us, but they've killed ISIS, who hurts the world. And we're proud to have done it. And I'll tell you, they're up there looking down on us. And there is nobody happier or more proud of their families to put them in a position where they've done such good for so many people. So our boys, our young women, our men, they're all coming back, and they're coming back now. We won, and that's the way we want it, and that's the way they want it.
The momentous decision to withdraw, which runs counter to long-established U.S. policy for Syria and the region, blindsided lawmakers, the Pentagon, and international allies alike. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, a Trump ally, said the president's decision was unwise and put the Kurds at risk, while Democratic Senator Jack Reed said it amounted to a betrayal of the Kurds that provides further evidence of President Trump's inability to lead on the world stage. Currently, about 2,000 U.S. forces are in the country, most of them on a train and advise mission to support local forces fighting ISIS. Meanwhile, France said it will maintain its participation in the coalition fighting ISIS forces in Syria, according to government officials, after President Trump surprised Washington's allies by ordering U.S. troops home. For now, of course, we remain in Syria, France's European Affairs Minister Nathalie Loiseau said on CNews television, adding the fight against terrorism is not over. France has stationed fighter jets in Jordan and artillery along the Syrian border in Iraq as part of the U.S.-led coalition, as well as an undisclosed number of special forces on the ground. U.S. allies have warned that despite losing most of the territory it once controlled during the bloody Syrian civil war, the ISIS threat has not been totally eradicated. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin said Thursday he backed U.S. counterpart Donald Trump's decision to order troops back home from Syria after declaring victory over ISIS forces. Take a look.
Согласен с президентом Соединенных Штатов. Мы, я уже об этом тоже говорил, добились существенных изменений в борьбе с терроризмом на этой территории и нанесли серьезные удары по ИГИЛ в Сирии. Согласен с президентом Соединенных Штатов.
President Putin reiterated Moscow's view that the U.S. presence in Syria is illegitimate because it has not been agreed by the UN Security Council or approved by Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's government. Russia is a key ally of Syria's President Assad, and its military intervention beginning in 2015 turned the tide of the war in his favor. Reuters quoted a U.S. official as saying the troops' pullout would take between 60 and 100 days.
Мы, я уже об этом тоже говорил, добились существенных изменений в борьбе с терроризмом.
To other news now, a charity has revealed the secret exchanges former U.S. President George H.W. Bush had with a Filipino boy he sponsored over a 10-year period. To the boy in the Philippines, his American benefactor and source of kind letters and gifts was known simply as G. Walker. To the charity helping him keep his benevolence secret from the world, he was actually George Herbert Walker Bush, the 41st President of the United States. Compassion International, which helps poor children around the world, revealed for the first time this week that the late president, who died last month, had quietly sponsored a Filipino boy named Timothy for 10 years. The organization released a number of Bush's heartwarming letters to his young charge. I want to be your new pen pal, Bush wrote in his initial letter sent on January 24, 2002. I am an old man, 77 years old, but I love kids, and though we have not yet met, I love you already, said the former president, identifying himself as a resident of Texas. Bush's former press secretary, Jim McGrath, confirmed to AFP the authenticity of the letters. Bush began sponsoring Timothy with a monthly donation in 2002 until his graduation from the charitable program in 2012. Through all of that time, Bush's true identity was kept secret due to security concerns. Bush received messages back from Timothy to thank him for his presence. Thank you for not forgetting me. You're so nice and good, read one letter. When Timothy learned who his mentor was, he said it was life-changing, although the charity has not been able to get in touch with him since. In other news, a 59-year-old Japanese national tagged as the leader of a major fraud ring and allegedly one of the most wanted fugitives in his country was arrested in a joint operation of the Fugitive Search Unit, or FSU, of Bureau of Immigration and Tokyo Interpol in Manila on Wednesday. In a statement on Thursday, Immigration Commissioner Jaime Morente said Misao Koyama, also known as Misao Kaminsukaso, is set to be deported to Japan, where he faces charges for allegedly forging private documents to sell other people's lands without their consent. Koyama will be temporarily detained at the Bureau's detention facility in Bicutan, Taguig City, pending his deportation. BIFSU Chief Bobby Raquepo noted the arrest was conducted after Japanese authorities sought the Bureau's assistance in locating and deporting Koyama, who has a standing warrant of arrest for fraud. The BI official also added that Koyama is allegedly the leader of an 8-man fraud ring, accused of selling other people's properties by using forged land deals. They have reportedly swindled billions of yen from their victims in Japan. Moroccan authorities have arrested 3 fugitive suspects in the grisly murder of 2 Scandinavian hikers after an intensive manhunt, according to a source close to the investigation. The arrests in the city of Marrakesh follow a first arrest on Monday, hours after the discovery of the 2 women's bodies in the high Atlas Mountains. The man already in custody is suspected of belonging to an extremist Islamic group. Danish citizen Louisa Vesterager Jespersen, 24, and 28-year-old Marian Yuland from Norway were on a month-long holiday, Yuland's mother told Norwegian broadcaster NRK. Not Now, their bodies were found on Monday after they had pitched their tent at an isolated mountainside 2 hours walk from the tourist village of Imlil. Now, investigators had on Wednesday night released profiles of the 3 fugitives. All 3 come from Marrakesh, and one of them had a, quote, a court record linked to terrorist acts. The 2 women were attacked with a knife, according to authorities. Now, one was then beheaded, according to a source close to the investigation. Authorities are still determining the authenticity of a grisly video posted on social media allegedly showing the murder of one of the women, according to the investigation. Now, tourists say they were in shock.
We wanted to do some hiking. We were thinking about going up Mount Tupko, if that's how you say it, but I don't think we're allowed to right now because of what happened. It's really sad. We haven't heard many details, but yeah, we feel really bad for the ladies that happened. Yeah, when we heard that there'd been some people had died up here, we weren't sure what had happened, if it was murder or if it was an accident, but yeah, it did make us think about whether or not we would come here. But in the end, we already had our accommodation booked, so we thought it should be okay because it's a small place.
Yeah, I think it's really sad, especially I know there's 2 women. I suppose I feel safer because I'm here with my partner who's a man, but yeah, it's really sad. But I don't think it should discourage people from travelling. I think in general Morocco is quite a safe country, but sometimes terrible things happen and it's really sad.
A Yemeni mother who was granted a waiver from President Trump's ban on travel from several Muslim-majority countries has arrived in the United States to say goodbye to her dying toddler son. Shaima Swile wore dark glasses as she walked into the arrivals terminal at San Francisco Airport Wednesday night. A group of supporters carrying placards greeted her. Her 2-year-old boy, Abdullah Hassan, a U.S. citizen like his father, suffers from a rare genetic brain condition and is on life support in a hospital in Oakland, California. But Swile had been unable to join him due to Trump's order barring visitors from 6 countries, including Yemen. After a tearful televised plea from the boy's father prompted public outrage, the U.S. Embassy in Cairo issued a visa for Swile, who has been living temporarily in Egypt. Hassan said he had been ready to take his son off life support last week after doctors said the case was terminal, with his wife only receiving automated replies when inquiring with U.S. authorities on her visa application. The Council on American Islamic Relations, which is assisting the family, launched a campaign that it said prompted 15,000 emails to elected officials as well as thousands of tweets. Abdullah's grandfather earlier told the San Francisco Chronicle that Swile was crying every day as she wanted to see her son one last time. Exceptions to Trump's bans are exceedingly rare. The American Civil Liberties Union, which opposes Trump's order, said that only 2% of applicants have been granted waivers. In other news, the U.S. Senate passed an emergency short-term spending bill that will avert a looming government shutdown, but it excludes the $5 billion that President Trump sought for a U.S.-Mexico border wall. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said the measure would fund normal government operations at current levels through February 8, avoiding a potentially crippling closure of some Fed offices over next week's coming holiday.
Later this morning, I'll introduce a continuing resolution that will ensure continuous funding for the federal government. The measure will provide the resources necessary to continue normal operations through February the 8th. I'm sorry that my Democratic colleagues couldn't put the partisanship aside and show the same good faith flexibility that the President has shown in order to provide the resources our nation needs to secure the integrity of our borders as well as the safety of American families.
Let me be very clear. The administration cannot reprogram funds appropriated by Congress for the full wall without our assent. To do so would violate Congress's Article 1 powers. They cannot do it on their own, and the House and Senate will not approve a wall. Now, Leader McConnell has proposed a short-term CR just a few minutes ago. We would have preferred one of our two options. But I'm glad the leader thinks the government should not shut down over the president's demand for a wall, and Democrats will support this CR.
While the White House indicated Trump was open to reviewing whatever Congress could pass, the president didn't immediately weigh in on the short-term plan. The Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said the Senate will remain in session on Thursday, U.S. time. Many of Trump's supporters were frustrated that he appeared to retreat on his shutdown threats after promising a fight over the wall, which had been central to his presidential campaign. Just last week, Trump said he would be proud to shut down the government over his demand for $5 billion for the wall. Take a look.
You know what I'll say? Yes. If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay,
absolutely.
fair enough.
And I am proud, and I'll tell you what, I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck, because the people of this country don't want criminals and people that have lots of problems and drugs pouring into our country. So I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it.
Now, White House aides told U.S. media that Trump is inclined to sign the measure, but it is seen as a defeat for the president, who had argued strenuously for new funding for a wall that he insists would check illegal immigration. The 6-week deal would temporarily break an impasse over spending and border security as Democrats and Republicans continue to clash over immigration. The president has fumed about Democrats not giving in, and he ranted about it again on Wednesday. Take a look. He said, in our country, so much money has been poured down the drain for so many years, but when it comes to border security and the military, the Democrats fight to the death, he tweeted. We won on the military, which is being completely rebuilt. One way or the other, we will win on the wall. To other news now, almost 700 clergymen in Illinois have been accused of child sexual assault, a far greater number than the Catholic Church had previously disclosed, according to the Midwestern U.S. state's top prosecutor. Illinois Attorney General Lisa Madigan said the church's revelations that 185 clergy members were credibly accused of sexual abuse fell short of the number her office has uncovered. The preliminary results of an investigation that began in August found more than 500 additional priests and clergy members with sexual abuse allegations in the Midwestern state's 6 dioceses, a total of at least 685 accused. In a scathing statement, the Attorney General's office criticized the church's handling of the abuse allegations, saying investigations were lacking, and in many cases, law enforcement and child welfare authorities were not notified. The preliminary stages of this investigation have already demonstrated that the Catholic Church cannot police itself, Madigan said. She added that the church had failed to provide a complete and accurate accounting of all sexually inappropriate behavior involving priests in Illinois. The Archdiocese of Chicago, the largest of the Illinois dioceses, countered Madigan's report by insisting that all abuse claims are investigated and reported to authorities. But Madigan's office said allegations of abuse have often not been adequately investigated if they are scrutinized at all. Among the reasons for the lack of action were that the accused was deceased or had already resigned. Residents in Chicago reacted to the situation.
It just keeps going further and further. Every time we turn around, there's a new story about this, and it never seems to change. Nothing ever seems to get better. They always seem to be covering up. It's rampant, and something needs to change.
The fact that they said it was 700, I'm sure there's more, and I think that it's a lot of people in power who abuse young people who don't have places to turn to. They don't have people to go to, and they feed off of these innocent and vulnerable people.
I can see how this might be an attempt to paint the Catholic Church as child molesters, and that's false. It breaks my heart to see that this is what's being done to the Catholic Church based on 185 or 700 people. If there's one, that's too many.
The Illinois investigation was prompted by a sweeping grand jury report in August that revealed credible allegations against more than 300 suspected predator priests and identified over 1,000 victims of child sex abuse covered up for decades by the Catholic Church in the state of Pennsylvania. In October, Fed authorities for the first time opened an investigation into clergy abuse. Dioceses in the state reported receiving Fed grand jury subpoenas to produce documents. Flights were grounded at Gatwick Airport after reports of a drone flying over the airfield. Flights were grounded at Gatwick Airport after reports of a drone flying over the airfield. One of Britain's busiest airports was forced to suspend all flights after these reports, causing disruption for at least 10,000. Flights into Gatwick Airport near London were diverted to other cities, while passengers waiting to take off faced long delays before having to stay in hotels overnight. The two drones were first spotted flying over the airport at around 9 p.m. local time. The airfield briefly reopened at 3 a.m. on Thursday but had to be closed again following further sightings, the latest at 7 a.m. local time. Chris Woodruff, Gatwick's chief operating officer, told BBC Radio that 20 police units from 2 local forces were looking for the drone operator. He said it was an irresponsible act that caused very significant disruption for passengers, with 6,000 people forced to divert to other airports late Wednesday. Gatwick is the 8th busiest airport in Europe and sits behind Mumbai as the world's busiest single runway air hub. It also serves more than 228 destinations in 74 countries for 45 million passengers a year. Under British law, drones cannot be flown near aircraft or airports or at an altitude of over 400 feet. Thousands of protesters wearing yellow vests marched in front of the Taiwan Presidential Palace, calling for tax and judicial reform. Taiwan's Yellow Vest movement started in 2016, rallying against unfair taxation. Take a look.
I'm coming here to protest the unjust tax system because the current tax system in Taiwan is very intransparent and unstable, and you can see lots of fraud in this tax system. So this caused lots of foreign companies retrieving their investment from Taiwan, and also lots of local companies cease operating, and that seriously impact our working environments.
台湾的赋税人权才有未来。 台湾历经了解严、动员戡乱时期的结束，获得了民主的成就。大家觉得台湾已经不是一个威权体制的国家，但事实上，也许我们在一些刑法上，在民主的制度上，的确我们已经走出了威权时代。但是在台湾，税法的威权却无时无刻，直到现在，它还残害着人民百姓。
Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
Health is our
The Federal Reserve again raised interest rates in a move sure to anger President Trump and also send a clear signal it expects to slow its rate increases next year. The central bank indicated it would raise rates more slowly in 2019, signs that the U.S. and global economies are cooling.
What kind of year will 2019 be? We know that the economy may not be as kind to our forecasts next year as it was this year. History attests that unforeseen events as the year unfolds may buffet the economy and call for more than a slight change from the policy projections released today. Over the next year, if events play out broadly as expected, the federal funds rate will be in a range in which judgments of people both inside and outside the Fed will sometimes differ regarding whether the stance of policy is modestly accommodative, neutral, or modestly restrictive. When rates are in this range, the FOMC makes policy in light of the array of diverse views on the committee. Moving forward, my colleagues and I will be watching the economy closely for indications that the stance of policy is appropriate to sustain the expansion with a strong labor market and inflation near 2%. It's worth noting that the summary of economic projections is a compilation of the individual projections of all FOMC participants. We sometimes point to the median of these projections to illustrate the broad middle of views of the committee.
Stock markets dropped on the Fed announcement after rising sharply earlier in the day. The Dow and S&P 500 each closed down around 1.5%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq lost more than 2%. The decline reflected what analysts said was a less dovish Fed statement that many investors had expected, given the signs of slower growth and recent market volatility. The U.S. economy remains strong with unemployment at a nearly 50-year low at 3.7%, inflation barely at 2%, and business confidence persistently high. But cracks have started to appear, and many economists now say the economy may have peaked, especially since the housing market has been trending downwards in recent months. Trump's trade wars and signs China's economy is slowing have added to the global uncertainty. Trump would rather the Fed stop now and continue to help boost the economy, warning in his latest attack on Twitter that the central bank would be making yet another mistake by raising interest rates on Wednesday.
But they've killed ISIS, who hurts the...
Political considerations play no role whatsoever in our discussions or decisions about monetary policy. We're always going to be focused on the mission that Congress has given us. We have the tools to carry it about. We have the independence, which we think is essential to be able to do our jobs in a non-political way. And we at the Fed are absolutely committed to that mission, and nothing will deter us from doing what we think is the right thing to do.
Carlos Ghosn could soon be freed on bail after a Japanese court threw out a bid by prosecutors to extend his detention, in a move nearly as unexpected as the auto tycoon's sudden arrest. In a shock decision, the Tokyo District Court said on Thursday it had heard the prosecutor's request to keep Mr. Ghosn in detention and had rejected it. The move means he may be released as early as Friday. Take a look.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are announcing the new midterm plan of Group Renault. We'll continue to lead the industry when it comes to mass market electric vehicles alongside our partners.
This regulation is coming from the European Commission. At the end of the day, means that all the car makers...
Comment allez-vous? Vous allez bien? Bonjour. Bonjour. Aujourd'hui, compte tenu de toutes les enquêtes qui ont été faites en France, en Allemagne, en Angleterre, etc.
In other business news, the Qatari government is intent on increasing its bilateral cooperation with the Philippines as it looks into signing 10 more partnership agreements with the country. In its primer on the Qatar-Philippines relations, the Qatari embassy in Manila recently listed the agreement expected to be signed in the near future in the fields of energy, customs law, youth, sports, combating transnational crime, cooperation between central banks, education, human rights, military, and marine industries. During a reception in celebration of the Qatar National Day in Makati City, Qatar Ambassador to the Philippines, Ali Ibrahim Al-Malki, said the Gulf state seeks to increase cooperation and trade exchange between the two countries. Under the current administration, as a follow-up to President Duterte's trip to Doha last year. The two nations have so far signed bilateral agreements on health, culture, air services, tourism, trade and investment, and agriculture and fisheries, among others. Tokyo's benchmark Nikkei index plunged to a 15-month low amid disappointment over the most recent meeting of the U.S. Federal Reserve Central Bank. The Nikkei 225 index, which at one point had lost more than 3%, closed down 2.84% or 595.34 points to finish at 20,392.58, the lowest since September last year. The broader Topix index dropped 2.51% or 38.99 points to 1,517.16. The Tokyo market opened lower, extending losses in U.S. shares amid worries over the Fed's pace of monetary tightening, according to analysts. In addition to worries over the Fed meeting, concerns over the slowing of the global economy also weighed on the market, according to Okasan Online Securities in its commentary. A strong yen also put downward pressure on stocks, according to Daiwa's Sato. China's Xiamen Air had started its bi-weekly Guangzhou-Davao direct flights early this week. Xiamen's maiden flight, MF8679, touched down at the Francisco Bangoy International Airport Tuesday and was welcomed with a water cannon ceremony upon arrival at 12:36 p.m. with 130 passengers on board. On its return flight to Guangzhou, the airline carried 104 passengers, led by this city's Vice Mayor Bernard Al-Ag. Xiamen Air Executive Vice President Wang Guishu said the air link will further enhance bilateral exchanges between the Philippines and the People's Republic of China. He said it will develop efficient and convenient air connectivity for business travelers in Guangzhou and overseas Chinese residing in the Philippines, as well as develop exchanges between the two cities and achieve beneficial results in the areas of commerce and culture. The new route is the only non-stop flight from mainland China to Davao, utilizing the Boeing 737-800. Wu Weiqing, the marketing officer of Xiamen Air, said the new route has increased the airline's China-Philippine market share by 50%. Xiamen Air also flies to 32 cities, including Beijing and Shanghai, where passengers can move through transfer. International credit rating agency Fitch Ratings has affirmed the country's long-term foreign currency issuer default rating at BBB with a stable outlook. Fitch Ratings said growth prospects in the Philippines remain favorable as it maintains its gross domestic product or GDP growth forecast for the country at 6.6% in 2019 and 2020. Growth prospects remain Prospects remain favorable, supported by strong domestic demand and increasing infrastructure investment, Fitch Ratings said in a statement on Thursday. It also noted that inflation rate is slowing down, partly due to the hiking of interest rate by the Monetary Board and easing of supply-side pressures. It also highlighted the government's increasing revenue collections as it implements the first package of tax reform for acceleration and inclusion, or TRAIN law, this year. But Fitch Ratings said GDP growth could come under downward pressure, similar to other countries in the region, from the slowdown in China and escalating trade tensions with the U.S. and from rising domestic and global interest rates. Tens of thousands of taxi drivers in South Korea went on a nationwide strike on Thursday, snarling up traffic in Seoul in the latest protest at a planned Uber-like ride-sharing service. An estimated 50,000 taxi drivers wearing headbands, chanting slogans and waving banners rallied outside the parliament, calling for the carpooling app to be banned, according to AFP photographers at the scene. Drivers say the service being introduced by Kakao Talk, the country's largest mobile chat app, will threaten their livelihoods. A 57-year-old taxi driver already committed suicide by setting himself on fire in a solo protest outside Parliament in Seoul last week, forcing Kakao Talk to delay their launch of their service initially set for this week. Now, traffic jams were reported on some highways leading to the capital. Police have mobilized 9,000 riot police to maintain order, according to Yonhap. A backlash from taxi drivers in South Korea forced U.S. giant Uber to close its main ride-sharing service in 2015. The company now has only a minimal presence in the country, offering only taxi and licensed hire vehicle services. Kakao Talk is used by more than 80% of South Koreans, and in recent months, tens of thousands of taxi drivers have held mass rallies in Seoul to condemn its upcoming carpooling service. Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Residents of a neighborhood in Washington state were forced to evacuate their homes after a rare tornado caused significant damage in their area. Take a look.
My neighbors called me and he was frantic. He said, he just told me so many things. People's roofs were coming off. We have a travel trailer and it fell to the, off the stands, which is fixable. It's not broken. And he said all the trees are just falling everywhere. No, the power lines across the street. You know, I left work and came home. I lived here all my life, and I've never experienced the devastation that a tornado can do.
She said there's a tree down in my house, and my house was gone. And my main concern was for my dog.
Tuesday's bizarre twister outside of Seattle, Washington was just one of a slew of tornadic oddities in 2018. The Port Orchard tornado was rated EF2 with winds of 120 to 130 miles per hour by the National Weather Service in Seattle. This touchdown is the first EF2, F2 or stronger tornado in the state since May 13, 1986, according to the Tornado History Project. The Port Orchard tornado was one of the strongest to strike the Evergreen State. Since 1954, 15 strong tornadoes, F2, EF2 or stronger, have had touched down in the state, including 3 F or EF3 tornadoes. The most recent tornado in Washington state was in Spokane County in 2016, and the last December tornado in the state was in Clark County on December 10, 2015. Since 1986, Western Washington hasn't been included in a tornado watch. Now, when this tornado struck, it was only the 16th report of severe weather, tornadoes, severe wind gusts, 58 miles per hour or stronger, or large hail this year in Washington through December 17, and the first reported tornado of the year. Japan is considering pulling out of the International Whaling Commission, or IWC, according to officials, as Tokyo reportedly gears up to resume commercial whaling activity next year. Now, such a move would spark international criticism against Japan over whale conservation and deepen the divide between anti- and pro-whaling countries. Some ruling coalition lawmakers have been saying that Japan would not be able to resume commercial whaling as long as it remains a member of the IWC. In 1982, the IWC introduced a moratorium on all commercial whaling. Japan suspended catching whales for commercial purposes in 1988. It then began research whaling to study whale resources. Citing unnamed government sources, local news agency Kyodo said a formal decision to withdraw from the IWC would come by the end of the year. Japan insists whale stocks have now recovered sufficiently to allow commercial hunting to resume. Tokyo currently observes the moratorium but exploits a loophole to kill hundreds of whales every year for scientific purposes as well as to sell the meat. Bamboo seats and a mud stage in the middle of the forest. This is where a small, one-of-a-kind theater festival called Under the Sal Tree takes place each December in India's Assam state. It's aimed at highlighting environmental and sustainability issues in a country known for its pollution. Take a look.
It's held in a completely natural environment. It's held inside a forest of what we call sal trees, and there is no artificial sound, artificial light, or any no plastic is allowed. It's all in natural environment, and the plays which are performed here, they are I would say they represent some very unique theatre.
That the entire forest here, not one single tree has been cut. The seating arrangement is all made out of bamboo. And if there is a tree in front of you and you're watching theatre, it doesn't matter. You just have to turn your neck a little bit.
The Bernardino Rivadavia Natural Sciences Argentine Museum in Buenos Aires unveiled the skeleton of a giant Plesiosaurus, an extinct marine reptile discovered in Cretaceous rocks near Argentino Lake in the province of Santa Cruz. The fossil is of a marine reptile found in Cretaceous period rocks close to the southern town of El Calafate, 2,800 kilometers from Buenos Aires. The remains of this Plesiosaurus are the most complete found in Argentina and were discovered in rocks submerged in Lake Argentino at the foot of the Andes Mountains. 4 tons of rocks had to be removed to unearth the fossil remains found just 500 meters or 1,640 feet from an international airport. Plesiosaurs were huge marine reptiles that lived in seas throughout the entire planet, inhabited the entire planet, with long necks, tiny heads, and sharp teeth, according to scientists. It was an era before the Andes existed and when Argentine Patagonia lay underwater, according to experts. The fossil is 9 meters long, with each fin measuring 1.3 meters. The news continues. Zero and Eagle News International will be right back.
Health is a
Welcome back. At the Mipondwe border, those arriving from the Democratic Republic of Congo are washing their hands and shoes in chlorinated water and are having their temperature taken for signs of fever before they are permitted to cross into Uganda, as authorities increase efforts to stop Ebola from entering Uganda. Since Congolese authorities declared an outbreak on August 1, more than 300 people have died from the hemorrhagic fever spread by contact with the body fluids of an infected person, a death rate of almost 60%. With border communities deeply intertwined, the World Health Organization says there's a high risk that the virus will spread to Uganda, which has already had several scares.
Na hatuna habari, afadhali waendelee juu vita imewasukuma wote huku.
We have established 6 screening points at the main point of entry called Mbondwe, where we do screening, and on a daily basis, on a very busy day, we go as far as 30 people screened. Of course, we have also established other screening points. You know, our border with the DRC is so porous, and we've managed to add another 5 screening points besides the main point of entry, which is in Mbondwe.
Crispy, fried, and packed full of worms. Hanoi's Charoy ragworm fritters are a winter foodie favorite in the Vietnamese capital, but the deep-fried delights are not for the squeamish. Take a look.
Khi mà mình nhìn thấy các bạn sợ mà đừng sợ, nhìn thân hình nó xấu này thôi, nhưng cái chất lượng bên trong của nó cực kỳ là ngon, bởi vì cái lượng đạm và lượng protein của nó rất là cao. Ví dụ như những cặp càng được lên này càng gần lên đẹp.
Chiều nay tại Cần Thơ, đồng chí Trương Thị Mai, Quý Liên.
Mình thì mình thích ăn vào mùa đông. Cái cảm giác nó được cái hương vị có chua chua ngọt ngọt của nước chấm, với cả là rau sống nó mát, nó đỡ háo. Với cả là cái chả dưa này ăn rất là thơm ngon và bùi. Cảm giác rất là lạ. Đấy, mà chỉ
chơi nhiều thôi. Bèn nuôi cá. Không phải. Đưa anh lại là phải là đi lên bờ cơm áo gọi tiền rồi, thì nó chơi nhiều cái Quỳnh là làm lắm.
And finally in our news, ABC's Christine Era takes us to the exciting game between Toronto and the Golden State. Take a look.
Tonight was more than just Toronto versus Golden State. It was more than just the first place team in the league versus the reigning NBA champions. Tonight offered a taste of what some have said could be the matchup in this year's finals. With the Raptors all but ready to go with the full lineup, they controlled much of the game, but the three-time champs show why they were the three-time champs. Clawing their way back, forcing OT with a tying shot with less than 5 seconds left in the game. A lot of hype and excitement came prior to this game. And when it was all said and done, the game not only lived up to that hype, but surpassed it. With the game being tied up in the final moments, Kevin Durant scored a game-high 51 points, but the Raptors prevailed to a 131-128 win. Fans can only imagine what kind of series this will be like if they meet in the finals. From the Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, Canada, I'm Christine Era, 1 with 25.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. For everyone here in Eagle News International, I'm Alma Angeles, always 1 with 25. Good night.
Us all the time.